But okay, to start off, I'm quite excited that we're doing this because for a long time I've been wanting to do a podcast with various health practitioners. I think the main objective of the podcast is becoming the person that you were always meant to be, like before, baggage got in the way or before life happened. And this is very exciting. That you are going to be my very first interviewee. I'm very excited to be in Neisner. You've been a chiropractor running a successful practice for over 20 years, as far as I know. You've worked with high-level athletes. You've worked with actors and celebrities, and on Richard Branson's Game Reserve at some point. I was quite excited to see that you've now launched this course of yours. What prompted the shift from chiropractic to now an online course? Like, what is that all about?
So it has been a long journey. I realized when I was doing chiropractic that it was one of the aspects that people needed to address in order to get results, but it was only one of what I see as about 5 really major aspects that people need to look at in their lifestyle. And I could work with them as a chiropractor till I'm blue in the face, but if they weren't changing their lifestyle and doing other things, that they weren't getting there. And then trying to get people to exercise and sleep properly and eat properly and do these things and work on their mind, it was difficult because people know what they should be doing. 5-year-olds know what they should be doing, but 80% of the world is sitting in chronic degenerative conditions, diseases, and it's causing premature death, unnecessary suffering in the world with loved ones, with people. So I went into trying to help people get their lifestyle in order, and to structure it, and even just to move the needle a little bit so that they can make significant changes. And then I realized it was people were really enjoying it, and some international people got hold of me to try and also help them with their conditioning, their health and wellness, and what I call their conditioning. Okay. And I noticed that I realized I could do it from afar, like through online or Zoom or whatever it is. And accountability was one of the major things that I noticed that people needed, some sort of support. I remember someone saying, okay, Brett, I get it, but what do I need to do? So I took them through a whole program, and we were able to really shift them. The one guy.
So it's like a combination of coaching and teaching in terms of the online course. Okay, all right.
So it is that. I mean, once again, you ask the 5-year-old what you should be doing, that's fine. But to actually do it is hard and difficult and inconvenient. And I believe in the Western world that people are faced with so many things that distract them and instant gratification, that all the decisions they make have positive outcomes, like smoking a cigarette, drinking alcohol, eating poor quality food. There's a positive feedback with that. So that's what I learned is, okay, there's positive feedback, but it's in the short term. And it's creating long-term consequences down the line, which is essentially where I think disease comes from. And that is where my greatest learning has been, is to help people realize that and then shift that so that they can be making decisions from a much deeper, wiser part of them, and that they're not doing this instant stuff.
Okay, but how? I mean, how does this new program help them do that?
So the first thing is, so we go into all the what and the how. What do you need to do? How do you exercise? There are different levels we have a look at. That's very simple. If you're not exercising, start walking. If you're walking, then start doing interval training and a little bit of weights. And then there are various levels. But the big thing is the philosophy behind it, for people to understand that their brain is not making a mistake when they're going for instant gratification. It's what the brain is designed to do. It's a survival part of the brain. Yet in the Western world, everything is so easily gettable, easily acquired. So as opposed to when we were dwelling in caves, to eat 5,000 calories in a day was not easy.
Yeah.
So now it's so easy. It's at our fingertips, and it's cheap, and it's laced with all sorts of things to taste good, which is
instant gratification.
All the instant gratification. So to teach people that their brain isn't making a mistake, but that there are consequences to all of the decisions that they make. Every single decision gets pushed through a very specific part of our brain. And I have a look at what parts of us make those decisions, the emotional part of ourselves. Like so many times I've heard youngsters say, but I don't feel like it, which is, okay, great. You know, how many Marines feel like training, getting up in the morning with blisters on their feet and going? So it's about overcoming that, knowing that there's a bigger picture at play and a longer vision. You know, we think everyone's saying, no, you must just live in the present. It's nonsense. It's such, I mean, Eckhart Tolle is correct about living in the now, but living in the now as a spiritual sort of teaching, I understand, but you know,
it doesing mean instant gratification.
It doesn't mean instant gratification. Yeah. And you're living with that person. You're living with the person who's going to have a hangover tomorrow or is going to be dying of cancer in 40 years. Yeah. That part of you is within you. We don't live in this finite mind. I mean, Jordan Peterson gave a reference to Homer Simpson, who was drinking vodka and mayonnaise. Okay, as Homer would.
Okay.
And Marge Simpson says, "No, Homer, you mustn't be doing that, Homer." And he's like, "What? How are you going to feel tomorrow?" And Homer says, "That's tomorrow Homer's problem." Oh. So that's what living in the now is, and the consequences of that. Yeah. But we do live with that future part of ourselves. And so long as we start to engage with that us, that future part of us, we can start making wiser decisions. How are you going to be when you're 70? Are you going to be able to play golf, play on the floor with your grandchildren, play the piano, whatever it is? We need to make decisions based on all of these different parts of us. And it's difficult because we've got to fight our brain, which is perfectly designed to go for all of these things. And that's where the ego lives, is in the money, the power, and the pleasure, and the fame. So even though these things are necessary parts of the brain, because this is what gets us. So the second part of the brain we have a look at, let me just show you. The first part of the brain is survival. Don't die. Okay, so that takes us away from tigers and fear and trucks and those sorts of things bearing down on us, so that we don't die in the now. So that's where anxiety lives, and our nervous system to get us away from that. That's the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, and fright. The second part of the brain, and this is Brett's part of the brain, you know, it's a lot more complicated than this, but just for simplicity's sake.
When you say Brett's part of the brain, is
this is Brett's picture of how the brain works. Okay. The second part is procreation of our species. So the brain is built to get more mates, so that we can have sex and procreate. Okay? So that is, in order for us to do that, the brain wants us to have money, power, to have access to pleasure and fame. Because all of those things is what gets a guy chicks. Okay? That's how the brain works.
How does that translate to women? Okay.
So women are also, there's certain things that women are looking for in men, and certain things that men are looking for in women. And it all equates to just having sex.
Okay.
Nature doesn't care about your deeper spiritual journey. Nature only wants you to not die and to push the species. Sure. It doesn't care if you're painting beautiful pictures or composing symphonies. The brain wants the species to continue. That's nature. Okay. With a lion, the lion doesn't stop and go like, you know, I've killed the wildebeest here. That's good for 3 or 4 days. I think we're okay. Another wildebeest will run past. The lion's nature kicks in, it'll attack the wildebeest regardless. It doesn't go like, I've got enough for the next week. I'll be okay. And I think Joe and Jenny will be okay. Nature kicks in. The brain doesn't, that's not how that part of the brain works. So the instant gratification feeds into all of that. The pleasure part of it. And how we are interacting with that. And then the third part is our prefrontal cortex, the executive decision-making part, where we as humans have greater capacity to function than the whale or the shark or the lion or all of the crustaceans, whatever, where we can say, whoa, 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 whoa. I've had 6 ice creams now. I think 7 is a bit much. Whatever the story is. So we have the capacity for our brain to do that, but we don't. Generally speaking, as a human race, there's too much instant gratification. That's why addiction is crazy, gambling. So I teach people this. Once you know that, then you have a responsibility. I'm not saying people take the responsibility. But if a person knows, okay, this is how your brain's trying to do things, you need to stop and then choose. But you need to notice first. And the only way to notice is to have this education that you know how the brain works. Okay, now I know how the brain works. Flip, that's what's happening when I'm feeling down about myself and that's where dopamine lives, because that is going to make us feel better. We're going to have the ice cream and the peanut butter when we've broken up with us, whatever, and we wanting to feel better. Because the brain wants that elation so that it can go and do stuff.
Okay. So, it's at first glance, when I was looking at the website, it seemed like a program that was more focused on physical wellness, but it sounds, what you're telling me, it sounds that it's very heavily focused on the mind and addressing the motivations and the behaviors and the psychology driving the behaviors, which makes a huge amount of sense, because we all know people set New Year's resolutions and, without them making a drastic shift in their thinking, most New Year's resolutions fail, So that's really cool. Okay, so am I understanding that correctly? That it's quite heavily, predominantly about psychology and behavior? And
so yes, once again, you ask the 5-year-old, there are 5 things. You ask the 5-year-old, what do you need to do to be healthy? Eat your vegetables, exercise, drink water, sleep. They don't think about the mindfulness. Okay, and chiropractic care is one of the things that I bring in, because I think it can dramatically influence a person's life. So there's what the 5-year-old's spoken about. Why don't people do it?
Yeah.
So if I said to people, okay, Brett, how do I get healthy? Stop eating rubbish. There's so much junk around. Just eat food that nature provides. Very uncomplicated. When people have to ask me what that means, it's embarrassing as a human species and an intelligent species that we have to ask. God didn't make chips. Chips don't grow. So we've got to have a look at trying to undo the process, because as soon as there's a process, it changes how the food is absorbed and all of that. And then exercise, we've got to move. I read research today that a ligament tear in a knee increases your chance of having a heart attack by 50%.
Really?
A ligament injury in your knee.
Wow.
And that's all to do with the cascading events to get people that lead to people not exercising enough. 50%. Okay. It's like, oh my goodness me. So it just shows the deep impact that simple exercise can do. And then there are 5 different levels we have a look at from an exercise point of view that are uncomplicated.
Okay.
To move to that. So eat properly and exercise. Get good quality sleep. If you do those 3 things, you're 80% of the way there. But what's interesting is people can't, or people
It sounds so
don't
easy, and
want to.
such a vast majority of people don't get the basics right. Okay, so how? I mean, how do you get? I mean, I understand that there's a lot of work on the psychology, and even this sounds like there's an element of like a spiritual or some sort of the mindfulness aspect of it. Like how? Like what? Take me through the process of someone who's just signed up and joined the program, and like walk me through it. Like what does that look like?
So the DIY program that I've got, which is the well, you can go and do that no cost. It's available at meetdrBrett.com. People can go do that. It went live yesterday. Okay. People can do that for free. And it goes through some of the psychology. So if a person's really self-driven and self-responsible, most of the times they don't need the course because they've got their life in order already. Most of the times. You can do it yourself. But I've seen, once again, 80% of people don't complete the course. Okay. Now, if you have a look at drug addicts, the biggest way that you can guarantee a drug addict is going to stay clean is they need to complete the 21-day 12-step program. Because it's once it's done that all the magic and all the pieces fit together. So I take people through, I get them to start with one simple thing to do. And we have it at a very low barrier to entry. Okay. Just go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. Simple. Okay. Just do that. Do that for 6 weeks to 90 days, 6 weeks to 12 weeks.
So forming the right habits.
And then giving baby steps. Like, hey, I can do this. So many times people have failed because they aim there.
Yeah.
So that's what I start. So we do what we called a smart habit challenge. They do one little thing, and there's a way that we can define things, and people can choose. Okay, I'm going to start walking. Great. How often? So we take people through the acronym SMART. Everyone knows. Do you know the acronym?
SMART.
SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So everything. Every time you set yourself a habit or a goal, you can have a look at putting it through that system. So that because if someone says to me, Brett, what are you looking to do this year? I want to make more money. So I remember Tony, vague.
Very
so it's
vague.
Unspecific. So we take them through that. And then you've got to start understanding how your brain works. We don't need to understand how a car works, but you need to understand some basics. You need to push this button and the car goes forward. This button makes the car slow down. You need to understand certain things about the brain and how your brain ticks so that because it feels like your brain's sabotaging you. I just couldn't. I had to. The cookies were on the.
Those cookies, those damn cookies! They just get everyone.
So once you know how the brain works, it's like. Then the skill, 99% of the work, is to notice when your brain is doing different things to you. So we look to train that. And then I've got weekly check-ins. Also, a lot of people come and do the check-ins. Brett, listen, something happened. Can you I'm like, so we often understand that, okay, this is the brain's working, but Brett, this has happened. So the nature is very powerful. You can be sitting painting the beautiful painting and some threat to your survival happens, whether it's a knock at the door or like.
For me, it's just my blood sugar. My blood sugar drops, that's a crisis.
Or a ladder's falling on you. You're not going to go like, you're not going to carry on painting.
Yeah.
So there's certain hierarchies that your brain works with. So we spoke about the 3 levels. Level 1 wins all the time. Number 2 is then underneath number 1.
Number 1 being survival, number 2 procreation,
and then number 3 is the prefrontal cortex, our executive. So we can say stop. Okay. Stop. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't need another packet of cigarettes. I don't need another fizzer. I don't need another slice of cake. Need. This is a choice. So then we say stop. So it's notice first. Then once you're noticing, you're already in the process of almost stopping, and then you stop. You go, whoa, stop, and there's a way that you can then stop your brain from running. Shazad Shamin in Positive Intelligence spoke about stopping. Stop. And then you do certain things physiologically to stop your brain from going through the monkey talk. And then you check in with that. We talk about the sacred self, or that deeper self, or the God part of us, or that wise sage. There are lots of different ways that we can talk about it. And then you make a decision from that wise part of you. So those three steps: notice, stop, and then choose. So that's a training. The instant success it's not so easy. If you just do what I said, you'd get successful. But most people who realize that doesn't work. Why? Brett, help. So we've got to go deep into the psychology to understand, and then you've got to train your brain.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So there's a lot of brain training,
it's
but
training.
also like
and it's a
sort
practice.
of changing your paradigm in a way.
Yeah, because once you've had a look at that, and once you've learned that, you can't. Well, a lot of people forget it because it's inconvenient. Okay, I heard Michael Moore I think it was bowling. No, it wasn't bowling for Columbine, but Michael Moore said Americans fear one thing and one thing only, and that's inconvenience.
Oh.
And I think this is a Western thing.
Yeah, it is.
Inconvenience, which is the opposite of do hard work.
And interesting, convenience is actually killing us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so also the accountability aspect seems a big part of it. So training your brain, obviously, but the accountability is like how accessible are you, and how accessible are other people? Is there a community? How does that work?
So I'm building a community at the moment, and it's slow going. I meet once a week online where people all over the world can come and ask me questions and check in. Are my goals smart enough? How can you help me, Brett? So we often say to people with the habit challenge, do one thing and come and check. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's too vague, maybe it's too ostentatious, there are various things. So I'm available at the moment once a week. And then when I do the deeper course, which I call the Anatomy of Success, goes deep into the psychology of creating really, really functional habits. That then is almost one-on-one training. I take people through a 9-step process where we have a look at the belief systems around themselves, because a lot of people have this belief that they don't know, that they're scared of things, or they don't believe in themselves, or they're not worthy enough. We've done some deep work with that. So we go deep into that and check, is this a belief system you want to take with you? One of the belief systems that I grew up with was that Bishop Tutu, because we grew up in the apartheid South Africa.
Right.
My dad, bless him, he was actually a very kind man, but I grew up thinking Bishop Tutu was an idiot.
Okay.
Because my dad said it too many times.
Right.
So that's a belief system
Desmond.
that I took on. Yeah, and what a legend he is.
Yeah.
So, and various other things, rich people are cheats, or my son the other day said, Dad, this guy in my class, he's actually very nice for a rich guy. I'm like, dude, check your biases here. I'm not saying we all have biases.
Yeah.
So where did this come from? So we go deep into our belief systems, and some valuable work there, because those are where our greatest saboteurs live, that stop us from doing things in life that we know we need to be doing. And I mean, about the victim triangle as well.
Yes.
That everybody has that.
Drama triangle.
And that's a different part of the brain. It lives in a different actual anatomical region of the brain than that part of us that can make those wise decisions. So we need to stop. I talk about the vurvur. You go victim, persecutor, rescuer, and that happens instantaneously. And it's a different part of our psyche. So if we separate that, you can see, here goes my vurvur again.
Your vurvur.
Vurvur. So in South Africa, a vurvur is you know what a vurvur is?
No.
It's a piece of cardboard that's made, and you've got a piece of string that goes through two eyes like this, and you go like this, and you pull it, and the thing spins.
Oh okay.
It's called the
A
vurvur.
vurvur.
So we go through this vur, which is, the Buddhists talk about the monkey mind. It's all like crazy, like. So it's to like, oh, here Brett goes again.
Yeah.
Here goes the monkey. Yeah. So to notice that and to check myself doing these crazy things. And my greatest teaching is in traffic.
I think most of our greatest
for me,
teaching
it's
comes
like,
in traffic.
and my story that I tell myself is that I'm not important enough for that person to validate me.
Okay.
So let me take it further.
Okay.
In South Africa, we've got taxis that are notorious for not driving according to the legislation and the rules of the road. They stop in the middle of nowhere, they turn where they're not supposed to do, etc., etc., etc. I don't need to tell you about that. Okay.
No, I know all about that, but maybe we've got some international people watching, and South African driving is on another level, especially taxis.
I mean, in a lot of third world countries, things don't happen according to the rules of the road. And I love
that
Africa.
That wasn't supposed to happen.
I love South Africa, and I love living here, and it's one of the things that I've got to take with it, because I love the freedom that we have in South Africa. Yeah. But if someone drives and does things to me, anyway. So what I realize is the taxi driver doesn't see me as important enough to consider me. Mm-hmm. So my little insecure self that is fearful in the world, and I'll tell you what one of our deepest fears is, gets triggered, and I'm like rah, 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 about it. So now my practice is like to watch that and check for it and see myself going there, and to go like, hey, it's okay. What is the truth about you? Are you important enough in this world? Are you loved? And then as soon as you ask yourself a question, are you loved? Often it creates a grounding, and you stop being cross in this.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like mindfulness is a huge component of your training. That's really interesting.
Well, it's a practice.
Yeah.
Everything is about a practice. So we've got to learn the skill of doing what we need to be doing. And it's that, I mean, my course, I don't work with anyone for anything less than a year. Mm-hmm. To make these changes, and if you're talking about like a 40 or a 50-year-old, I'm going to say 2 years, because belief systems are ingrained.
Yeah. The older you get, the more ingrained, the more time to undo them. And it sounds like you're sort of also developing almost like a sense of a higher consciousness, or a connection to like a higher consciousness, that you're trying to kind of get yourself out of this monkey mind, ego treadmill that that many of us, most of us are actually on. So that's actually sounds really interesting.
Well, there are all sorts of words we can use, but awareness, consciousness is awareness. And to be aware is like, and I love the African word aware. aware, my bro. But it's a practice, and when you're aware, you can then use all of your there's a word that often slips. You can use all of your faculties, because you don't know you have these faculties. It's like, oh my goodness, this is such a great tool to use, that I can show up in the world in a better way for me. So I absolutely believe it's a spiritual journey, but it doesn't mean it has to be attached to any fixed dogma.
Sure.
But
it's not, beyond it, it might sound woo-woo to some people, but this is grounded in basic stress management in a way. I believe something just clicked there. We may have a dead camera.
Just started again.
Okay.
It's still going.
Okay, so I'll take that. I think, had you finished by the time it clicked?
I had finished.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, to pick it up. Okay, so, without anything sounding too woo-woo, it sounds like there's some really well researched and grounded techniques to help stress management, which again, like from everything that I've experienced and read, stress is probably the number one leading cause of disease. And
well, I use a different word.
Yes.
So when we have a look at stress, it's often used, but I prefer using the word anxiety.
Okay.
So stress for me, a golf ball can be compressed and stressed.
Yeah.
A chain on a bicycle, a machine, a piece of wire can be stressed. So it's got nothing to do with mind.
Uh-huh.
So stress is the demand placed on something.
Uh-huh.
So if you think of a piece of wood, you can stress it, and then it has a breaking point.
Yes.
That's the demand placed on it.
Mm-hmm.
And demand, we have a look at from an intensity point of view and a duration point of view. So stress we don't see as a bad thing. It's just a physical thing that happens in physics. So if you're stressing a muscle, it's duration, long periods of time like a marathon, or intensity, doing a 1 rep max. So that's stress. Anxiety that is unfounded or prolonged is the word I like to use because it's more accurate from a physiological perspective.
Okay.
That can create significant damage and deterioration from a cellular level and from a health perspective.
So with the anxiety is more like the inner state of what's happening inside rather than the external factors, than the external forces and strains. Is that, am I understanding that?
Well, if you've got a truck bearing down on my son who's on a motorbike, that's going to cause tremendous anxiety for me.
I'd imagine
so. That's the outside world. So anxiety is the perception of fear or the perception of threat, possible threat to survival, pain. So if we're living in that constant state, if you take people, I'm going to use the Boer War in the concentration camps, they were in tremendous anxiety. They didn't know if they were going to die day to day. Like that's what fear is, fear of pain or death essentially, or wandering the wilderness alone and then you're going to die. So, and that is our greatest fear, by the way, is to be kicked out of the tribe. And we wander the tundra lonely.
Oh, story of my life.
Yes.
But that's another podcast.
But anxiety, when we're faced with anxiety, financial, like because if you're like, if you don't have enough money, you're going to lose your job and lose your family and you're going to die alone. If you are hit by a car, there's pain, and you might die. Okay? So anxiety is specifically a beautiful part of the brain, perfectly built and perfectly applicable and specifically to get you away from imminent threat. Okay, perfect part of the brain. Used for short instances, if you think of a gazelle or a springbok in the veld, chased by a lion or a leopard or a cheetah.
Veld being savannah to anyone who's not from South Africa. Yeah.
They've got that, so that anxiety will create a sympathetic nervous system, and that's when people talk about nerves. Okay, and then you've got the adrenaline, all perfect for you to get away from imminent threat. The problem in the Western world is people are in that state for a prolonged period of time. And with stress and anxiety and all of that, everything needs, and depending on the duration and depending on the capacity that you can handle, all systems need to rest, recuperate, and recover so that they can handle more duration. So if you think of a wire, if you keep going, bending the wire, it'll break. If you bend it a little bit and then you leave it, it cools down and it recovers. And you can do that again. The same with muscles, the same with psychology, the same with fear, the same with chemical load on the body. So with anxiety, if we don't give our body and our brain opportunity to recover, it will absolutely cause have a deleterious effect on our body and cause damage and degeneration and accelerated cell death. Because the thing is, all the blood and all the nervous system pushes everything for us to run away. Our eyes and everything, and for us to fight and flight. That's supposed to be temporary. We can't sprint for ages. But now we're doing, in the Western world, most of the times the Western world, people are doing this prolonged periods of time and aren't giving their body the parasympathetic opportunity for the body to rest and recuperate. Rest and then digesting. Can you imagine people eating on the go? There's no blood to be doing all the work in the absorption.
Well, I mean, burnout case here, so I know all about it, and I think a lot of people do, and I think it is an increasing problem. So that's...
So sorry, you were talking about stress,
yes.
So I sort of interjected there.
No, I'm just trying to clarify your distinction between the stress and anxiety. Just to go back to the why, I mean, you're running a successful practice, you are, seem quite happy. I mean, you're an amazing chiropractor and you're working one-on-one individually, making a big difference in people's lives, also from that coaching point of view. But what made you kind of launch this quite broad and quite ambitious initiative where you want to be dealing with, quite a wide audience, from what I understand, like you are trying to reach quite a vast number of people. Like, why? And then also, I guess the next question, which is related to that, is who is this for? Like, who do you think would benefit most from this program?
So it's very difficult to articulate my why. I've been on a very deep journey about this self-discovery and learning and the difference it's made in my life. Whether it's stopping drinking, exercising more structured. So I've seen the effect that this has made on my life, and then on some of the people's lives that I've had the opportunity to help, people that have asked for the help. I really want to get to a bigger audience. I believe there's unnecessary suffering, and people don't know it, that they're going to have unnecessary suffering for themselves. They're going to get sick. They're going to suffer unnecessarily because these are preventable diseases. The 4 major killers in the world are preventable diseases. I mean, it's fascinating for me. So I believe there's unnecessary suffering out there, and I really believe that I can make a difference. Everyone knows the starfish story. The starfish story, the person walking on the beach. So a father and daughter are walking on the beach, and there are thousands of starfish washed up on the shore. And the little girl starts throwing the starfish one by one back into the ocean. And the father says, "My girl, there's so many starfish out there. You're not going to make a difference." And the little girl says to her dad, "I made a difference to that one." Mm-hmm. And there was also a time, this is actually a better story, I was walking on the beach with my mom, and my mom would always go walking her dog, and she'd have a packet for the dog mess, but she'd also have a big packet to put plastic in. And I'd always get so frustrated with her because I just want to walk freely and play with the dog, and I usually had a bat and a ball, but my mom would have these plastic packets and half a gumboot under her arm. And I'd say, Mom, come on. She said, "If I save one dolphin's life in my life, I'll do this for the rest of my life." And my brothers and I end up carrying plastic up the beach and stuff. So we do the same. So I want to try and guide people that they can make little shifts in their life. The same place where my parents are on holiday, had a holiday home. I was supposed to meet my mom for Christmas. So it was their farewell there. My family was overseas, and I was doing trail running at the time. So I wanted to run from a place called Kunsa, which is near East London, and it was a 25k run up the beach. So I left at like 5 a.m. on Christmas Day. I was going to meet my mom at a place called Haga, which is near Keimerth.
Okay.
And got the timing right. One of the most beautiful runs I've had in my life. And my mom was late. It's not like my mom. And in those days, I had a phone, but my mom's terrible with her phone. I couldn't get hold of her. Anyway, she arrived. I'm like, what happened? She says, no, there was a guy that cycled into town cycled into from their holiday cottage to the shop, which is 1 or 2 kilometers. And he had a heart attack and he died there. 50-year-old man. He was a cardiothoracic surgeon. The irony is crazy.
Wow. Okay.
But in front of his 16-year-old son. And it upsets me so much to think that this poor 16-year-old, now I've got a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old now. And this kid is going to have a thing about Christmas for the rest of his life. And that for me, that is the epitome of everything I want to do, is to somehow see if we can prevent that sort of suffering for that guy, for the family. The whole family would have had a horrible time, a horrible Christmas. And if I can make a little shift for people so that I can prevent that sort of thing, because 50 is absolutely way shorter than we can. And these are preventable diseases that we can absolutely, with relative simplicity, not necessarily ease, but with simplicity to prevent it. And hopefully, so that's my why. It's not the short version.
No, that makes perfect sense. I mean, do you think anyone could benefit? I mean, what if someone is already struggling with chronic diseases? So
I'll get into that now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But a deeper why is that this is my spiritual calling. This is a deeper thing. I work very hard to do stuff, and sometimes it's fruitless. There are many times, but I'm not going to stop. This is my life's work now, that I can do this, and I'm not going to stop, so that I can have a greater impact on the world, even if it's a tiny aspect of the world. My legacy is firstly to my children, that I've been an awesome dad, and my wife, okay? Because that's the biggest impact I can really have in the world, because that's an exponential. The next is then whoever comes into my sphere of influence, that I can see if I can inspire them, teach them, guide them, show them, work with them, inspire them, whatever it is, to change.